Stop for a moment, take a deep breath, and feel the universe is not what you see. What you call reality is just a projection of your own mind, a shadow of what you might perceive if you looked at it differently. There is a dormant sense within you, a vision that passes not through the eyes, but through consciousness. Some call it the third eye, others simply call it intuition. It has always been there, silent, waiting for you to awaken it, for you to use it to see beyond the obvious, beyond limiting beliefs, beyond the illusion of separation. And what you've been doing up until now is looking outside in the wrong way. In this video, I'll show you how to reactivate this natural vision, how to access the perception that transforms the way you feel, create, and experience life. But first, you need to stop. Stop looking the way you always have, because only then will you begin to see what's always been there. If you're ready, take another breath and dive into this realization that will change everything around you. You know, there comes a point when the spiritual quest stops being about answers and starts being about presence. And that's where the first pillar emerges, conscious silence. Not the silence you create with your lips, but the one that arises between one thought and another, when your mind surrenders for a moment and you feel a space where the world seems to breathe along with you. This kind of silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the full presence of the now. It's when the inner noise begins to fade and something deeper, more real, begins to emerge. Sometimes all it takes is closing your eyes for 30 seconds and watching your mind try to fill the void. And it's precisely in this void that the door resides. But there's no point in trying to force the mind to be silent. It's like the sea. The more you try to control the waves, the harder they crash. The secret is learning to float above them. Sacred breathing comes in here as the second pillar. When you consciously inhale, you're saying to life, I accept being here. And when you exhale, you're releasing control, fear, and overexertion. I often think of breathing as a reminder. Everything that comes and goes follows a rhythm, and awareness grows when you align with that rhythm. There's something deeply healing in realizing that the simple act of breathing can shift the frequency of your being. Over time, you begin to notice that breath and silence create a field, and within this field, the third pillar emerges, directed focus. This is where awareness becomes a lens, and what was once a chaos of scattered thoughts begins to organize itself. Focusing isn't about squinting and forcing attention. It's like shining a flashlight in the dark and choosing where you want to look. When focus aligns with silence and breath, a rare power is born, the ability to perceive what's truly happening inside and outside of you without distortion. This is when the universe ceases to be a theory and becomes an experience. These three pillars work as a kind of energetic triangle. Each supports the other. Silence creates space, breathing fills it, and focus directs the energy that flows within it. And the most interesting thing is that, contrary to what many people think, this doesn't require a temple, a cave, or a complex ritual. It requires sincerity. It requires the willingness to observe oneself without masks. A minute of true attention is worth more than hours of mechanical practices. When you begin to feel this ordinary life breakfast, traffic, someone's gaze, everything becomes a laboratory for awakening. At first, it may seem difficult. Your mind will resist, your body will become distracted, time will seem too short. But that's where the magic lies. The simple act of trying, even if imperfectly, begins to alter your vibration. Gradually, you'll notice that silence expands, that your breath becomes an anchor, and that focus brings you back to center. And the more you return to this state, the more natural it becomes. What was practice becomes nature. What was technique becomes presence. And it is in this presence that awakening begins to take shape, not as an event, but as a way of existing. And when these pillars are strengthened, something changes in the way you perceive the space around you. Your mind becomes more receptive, clearer, almost like fertile soil waiting to be sown. It is at this point that the true invitation to prepare personal space, the inner environment where awakening can blossom with deep roots. Every transformation begins with the right soil, and within us that soil is the mind. Imagine your consciousness as a garden. If it's overgrown with weeds, no seed will flourish. Preparing your personal space means, first and foremost, learning to care for this inner garden. It's pulling out the old roots of fear, haste, and comparison. It's clearing the soil of self-criticism and making room for something new to grow. Many people want to expand their consciousness, but still live within a hostile mental environment where silence is rare and the mind is always on alert. The first step is to transform this space into a place where you can truly dwell in peace. Mental preparation isn't about perfection, it's about consistency. It doesn't matter if the day was chaotic if you're tired, or if your head feels like a whirlwind of thoughts. The simple act of coming back to yourself, taking a deep breath and trying to be present changes everything. I like to think that the universe rewards genuine effort, not flawless performance. When you create the habit of patiently observing yourself, something begins to reorganize itself naturally. The mind, which was once a battlefield, begins to become a space for experimentation and learning. And little by little, chaos transforms into fertility. Sometimes what most blocks spiritual progress is the expectation that the ideal scenario will emerge. But the truth is, the ideal scenario is what you have now. The noise, the imperfection, the fatigue, all of these can be used as part of the training. It's like learning to meditate in the middle of the city. You don't expect absolute silence. You learn to find the silence within the noise. This skill changes everything because it frees you from the idea that awakening depends on external conditions. Your personal space is portable. You carry it with you wherever you go. Over time, you realize that preparing your personal space isn't a one-off task. It's a way of life. It's the daily care of the energy you bring within yourself. It's choosing what consumes your attention, what feeds your mind, and what drains your peace. It's like cleaning your house every day, not out of obligation, but because the air becomes lighter, the environment more alive. The mind needs to breathe too. When it's organized, it becomes a magnetic field that attracts clarity and repels confusion. And it's in this state that true learning begins to flourish. The most beautiful thing about this process is that it gives you back your power. You begin to realize that you don't need to wait for the perfect moment to begin. You create it. Preparation is, in fact, awakening itself in motion. Every time you silence judgment, breathe before reacting, Observe without getting lost. You are cultivating this inner space of wisdom, and the more you strengthen it, the more the external world responds harmoniously. The mind ceases to be an obstacle and becomes a tool for expansion. And it is in this fertile soil where silence, breathing, and focus have already taken root that a special practice emerges, a breathing ritual capable of further expanding the limits of perception, a process called SCP breathing, whose depth cannot be explained, it can only be felt. There are practices that can't be explained, they must be experienced. SCP breathing is one of these. It's not just a technique, but a portal, a silent code between the body and the cosmos. Imagine that with each breath you're typing an energetic password, opening doors within yourself that have been locked for a long time. Air enters, air leaves, and something subtle begins to move behind it. You're not just oxygenating your body, you're awakening memories, dissolving tensions, and inviting the unconscious to express itself. 7 deep breaths can completely change the energy field surrounding you if taken with full presence. The secret isn't counting your breaths, but the awareness that accompanies them. The modern mind has learned to breathe hurriedly, shallowly, anxiously, as if always running from something. SCP breathing does the opposite. It slows down time. Each inhalation becomes a reminder that you are alive, and each exhalation a surrender to the life that breathes you back. It's a conversation between the visible and the invisible. When you perceive this dialogue, you understand that breathing is the thread that sews body to soul, and for a moment everything seems to align. During practice, something curious happens. The physical body begins to yield, and another intelligence, silent and ancient, takes over. It knows what needs to be released, what needs to be healed, what needs to be remembered. You may feel tingling, heat, tears, or just a calm emptiness. Don't try to control it, trust it. The body is wise. The breath is the channel, and consciousness is the observer, witnessing the miracle unfold without needing to intervene. It's as if for a few minutes the universe breathes through you. 7 breaths, 7 steps. Each one takes you a little deeper, like descending a staircase that leads to the center of your being. The first is physical, the second emotional, the third mental, the fourth energetic, the fifth spiritual, the sixth cosmic, and the 7th silent. In the 7th, there is no longer a breather, only the pure act of breathing. It is the point at which the I dissolves and the observer becomes the flow of life itself. Some describe this state as ecstasy, others as peace. But in truth, it is simply a return to who we always were before we became distracted by the world. This practice, when done with intention, has the power to reprogram the way you perceive reality. It alters the body's magnetic field, expands the mind, and realigns internal frequencies. It's as if each cell receives a new pattern of light, a new order of harmony. There's no need to understand the process, just to allow it. The mind wants logic, the heart wants experience, and SCP breathing is precisely the bridge between the two. It doesn't explain, it shows. It doesn't promise, it reveals. And when you awaken from these moments of immersion, there is always a small gap, a moment when the world seems more vivid, more real, more connected. This moment between sleep and wakefulness, between the I and the whole, is what many call blind spot of consciousness. the threshold where the invisible begins to become visible. There's a place within us that the mind can't reach, an almost imperceptible gap between thinking and perceiving. It's there that what I call the blind spot of consciousness resides. It's not a flaw, nor a void to be filled. It's a sacred crevice through which infinity breathes within our human experience. Most people are so consumed with thought that they never notice this gap, but it's always there, like a silence between two musical notes. And when you notice it for the first time, something changes forever, because it's the first glimpse of who you are when thought falls silent. This blind spot is the threshold between two worlds, that of the ego and that of the self. It's a state very similar to that moment before falling asleep, when you're still conscious, but your body begins to surrender, and the boundaries between reality and imagination dissolve. It's a space where the unconscious begins to whisper truths that the waking mind can't hear. There, subtle perceptions blossom, intuitions ignite like sparks, and what once seemed invisible begins to take shape, color, and texture. It's a state of pure observation, where you don't analyze what you see. You simply feel the truth vibrating within you. The blind spot is the portal to mystery. It is there that consciousness experiences its own reflection, without mirrors, without words. But the curious thing is that this spot only reveals itself when you stop trying to find it. It arises in surrender when you stop searching and begin simply to be. It's like trying to see your own eye without a mirror, impossible while you're trying. But when you let go, it reveals itself. In that instant, time loses its meaning. The I dissolves and the entire universe seems to observe itself through you. This is the silent center of awakening. It's also at this point that the deepest insights often emerge. Ideas that don't come from logical reasoning, but from a much broader place. It's as if the unconscious sends fragments of wisdom encoded in sensations, images, or a simple internal certainty. And when you learn to recognize this state, the pause between thoughts, the calm between impulses, you begin to realize how noisy the ordinary mind is. The blind spot is contrast. It's the neutral ground where consciousness recalibrates, like a musician tuning the instrument before a symphony. If you're starting to feel the difference in noticing these gaps between thoughts, take advantage. Like this video to support this message. Comment below about your experience noticing your blind spot, and share it with someone you know who needs to expand their perspective on the world. Your every action helps spread these ideas and inspires more people to reconnect with this silent awareness. Reaching the blind spot requires delicacy, because the more you try to control it, the further it recedes. It's like a butterfly. It lands when the air is calm, not when it's in a rush. Therefore, the practices of silence, breathing, and focus are not ends in themselves. They are invitations. Invitations to approach the invisible without forcing its presence. And when the mind quiets enough, the blind spot opens like a window. You don't create it, you recognize it. And it is precisely when this window opens that we begin to realize that the mind has rhythms, waves, pulses, like the sea in constant movement. Understanding this brainwave dance is learning to navigate between the conscious and the unconscious with lightness and mastery. The mind is like the ocean. It has layers, depths, and currents that move at their own rhythms. On the surface, the waves are fast and choppy thoughts, worries, tasks. It's the common state of everyday life, where consciousness rushes from one point to another without pause, trying to make sense of the chaos. But just like the sea, the deeper you dive, the calmer everything becomes. The brainwave dance is precisely this dive acrossing from the mental noise to the deep waters of expanded consciousness. And the curious thing is that you don't need to fight the waves. You need to learn to descend through them. When the mind vibrates at a high frequency, we are on the surface in beta waves, where attention is focused outward. This is the realm of action, logic, and survival. But when we begin to slow down, something changes. The waves lengthen, perception expands, and the alpha state emerges, the one in which the body relaxes and thought loses rigidity. It is the moment when the artist creates, the musician improvises, the meditator begins to see the invisible. From there, the dive can go even deeper to the theta state, where the boundaries between dream and reality dissolve. It is there that the unconscious speaks its purest language. These frequency shifts aren't theoretical, you feel them. It's that instant when time slows down and the world seems clearer, as if everything were breathing in unison. It's the state in which you perceive synchronicities, intuitions, small signs from the universe. It's when thought gives way to direct perception, and the mind ceases to be the narrator and becomes the stage where the experience unfolds. Each wave layer is an invitation to see reality differently, and the deeper you go, the more silent and true the vision becomes. But there's a secret to this dive. You don't control the depth, you allow it. The rational mind tries to command. Now I'm going to relax. Now I'm going to meditate. But deep awareness doesn't obey orders. It reveals itself in surrender. It's like floating in the night sea, letting your body be carried by the subtle tides. The more you trust, the deeper you descend, and what seemed dark begins to shine from within. Intuition awakens, creativity blossoms, and the noise of the world fades into insignificance. Calm isn't the absence of movement, it's movement in harmony. Over time, you begin to realize that waves aren't enemies, they're messengers. Each has something to teach you. Fast waves teach you to act. Slow waves teach you to feel. And when you learn to move between them consciously, you discover an immense power to choose the mental state you wish to inhabit. You realize that the mind can be shaped, and that consciousness is the sculptor. The sea doesn't have to be without waves. You just learn to surf among them. This is the true balance between doing and being. And it is at this point, when we begin to master this inner dance, that the path becomes more challenging, not for lack of light, but for what it reveals. Forces emerge that test our clarity, shadows that hold lessons. They are the guardians of the threshold, and every seeker inevitably encounters them as he approaches the truth. When consciousness begins to expand, it not only finds light, it also finds everything that was hidden beneath the surface. And it is at this moment that the guardians of the threshold emerge. They are not enemies, though they sometimes present themselves as such. They are parts of us that dress in fear, doubt, impatience, or pride to test the solidity of our awakening. Each guardian is a mirror, reflecting a lesson that still needs to be integrated. And no matter how much the ego wants to flee or fight, the true path is to look into the eyes of each of them. because what you face within yourself transforms into the wisdom that will sustain your expanded state. The first guardian is often doubt the voice that whispers that none of this is real, that it's all imagination, that the mind is making up experiences. This doubt is precious because it demands discernment. It forces you to feel what is true rather than just believe. When you move through doubt, you discover conscious faith, not blind faith, but faith born of direct experience. It's the kind of faith that doesn't need proof because it's already been experienced. Thus, the guardian becomes an ally. It stops protecting the portal and starts holding it open for you to follow. Then comes fear. It appears as a cold wave on the skin, a tightness in the chest, a subtle resistance to surrender. Fear guards the portal to the unknown, and it only dissolves when you cross it. The secret is not to eliminate it, but to recognize it as an energy that demands acceptance. Fear is often love's way of getting your attention. It shows where there is still separation, where control still tries to dictate the flow. When you embrace it consciously, fear transforms into courage, not the courage to not feel fear, but the courage to walk with it alongside, in peace. And patience is another powerful guardian. It arises when the spiritual ego wants results, signs, and guarantees. This guardian teaches the soul about timing as circular, not a linear time. It's like a bud that insists on opening before spring. It needs to trust the rhythm of life. When you learn to rest within the process without demanding an immediate outcome, impatience dissolves into profound patience. And patience is the soil where wisdom flourishes. It sustains serenity during moments of apparent stagnation when the invisible is working silently. And finally, the spiritual ego, perhaps the most subtle of guardians. It disguises itself as light, as superiority, as false humility. It wants to prove that it is awake. It wants recognition for its consciousness. This is the test of true humility. Realizing that awakening is not a personal achievement, but a surrender to the whole. When this guardian is crossed, a kind of silent purity is born. The soul understands that there is no one to be enlightened. There is only life recognizing itself within itself. It is at this point that the seeker becomes presence, and the search loses its meaning. These guardians are not obstacles, they are teachers in disguise. Each appears at the exact moment, with the exact lesson, to strengthen the inner temple of consciousness. And when the lessons are integrated, something extraordinary happens. The mind opens to a new way of perceiving. Colors intensify, time seems to expand, and reality takes on a living, almost palpable texture. This moment when consciousness awakens to itself is what many call the moment of awakening. There's a moment when everything changes, and yet at the same time, nothing changes. A moment when you remain who you've always been, but now you clearly perceive what was previously hidden. This is the moment of awakening. It comes not with trumpets or dramatic lights, but with an almost sacred stillness. It's like waking from a leisurely dream and realizing the dream still exists. Only now you know you're dreaming. The air seems more alive, the sound clearer, the colors purer. It's a feeling of profound familiarity, as if you've been trying to remember something your whole life and finally do. Many describe this moment as a click, a silent turning point. Sometimes it comes during meditation. Other times in the middle of a small conversation or while you're washing the dishes. and suddenly you feel a wave of presence wash over you. It's so simple that the mind almost doesn't believe it, but the heart knows. It's the instant when the observer detaches themselves from the story and sees the whole with love. The pain is still there, but now there's space between you and it. You no longer identify with the suffering. You observe it, and that changes everything. Awakening isn't about floating above life. It's about diving into it with open eyes. It's when you realize that every emotion, every challenge, every person in your path has a purpose. Everything gains a mysterious coherence. Synchronicity becomes the new language of the universe. Coincidences stop feeling like chance and start feeling like answers. And curiously, the more awakened you become, the more humble you become, because you understand that awakening isn't a trophy, but a responsibility. It's like shining a flashlight in the darkness and realizing that the real work begins now. Some expect awakening as a continuous ecstasy, but it's more like breathing. It comes and goes, pulsates, expands, and recedes. Some days the light is intense. Others it seems distant, and that's okay. Consciousness works in cycles, like the tides. The important thing is to recognize the movement and not try to freeze it. Because each time you return to presence, even after being distracted, you deepen your awakening. It's not a fixed state, but a dance between the human and the divine, and it's precisely in this oscillation that wisdom matures. Over time, you begin to experience awakening not as an extraordinary experience, but as something natural. Your outlook changes, your way of relating changes, your reaction to pain changes. Everyday life, once automatic, transforms into a field of conscious experimentation. And the curious thing is that the more awake you become, the simpler everything becomes. What once seemed spiritual becomes simply real. Presence replaces effort, and the now reveals itself as the true temple. And it is in this state in which perception opens up to multiple levels of reality that a new challenge arises, learning to sail in deep waters, balancing expansion and rooting, so that awakening becomes a way of life, not just a passing glimpse. After awakening, the real work begins, because perceiving the truth as one thing, living from it is another. When vision expands, the world doesn't disappear. It reveals itself in new, more subtle, more complex shades. Emotions continue to exist, but now they are seen with a more compassionate eye. Old wounds resurface, begging for healing in the light of this new awareness. This is where we learn to navigate deep waters, where every emotional current carries messages from the unconscious, and every silence contains wisdom. Expansion without anchoring is lost. Therefore, awakening requires roots. The awakened mind resembles an ocean that has learned to listen to its own tides. There are moments of calm, of pure connection with the whole, and there are moments of storm, when old patterns return with force, trying to pull us back to the surface. It's natural. No wave is a mistake. They are all part of the same sea. Sailing in deep waters is learning not to identify with the movement, but with the silent depths that sustain it. It is the recognition that even when everything churns on the surface, there is a place within you that remains untouched, the center of being. Many are mistaken in thinking that awakening eliminates suffering, but what it does is dissolve the illusion of separation that fueled it. Suffering may continue to appear, but you observe it with new eyes. Instead of fighting it, you embrace it. And it is in this acceptance that pain loses its power and transforms into wisdom. It's like transforming sea salt into medicine. Awakened consciousness doesn't shy away from the shadow, it illuminates it. And the more light there is, the more subtle the lessons become. You realize that even discomfort is a form of invitation to presence. Over time, you understand that navigating deeply requires balance. If you dive too deep without breathing, you lose yourself. If you stay only on the surface, you never know the depth. Balance lies in learning to go back and forth between the absolute and the relative, between silence and action, between spirit and body. It's a sacred back and forth, a pulse that maintains the flow of life. And it is precisely in this conscious oscillation that expansion stabilizes. You stop chasing elevated states and begin to inhabit the now with wholeness. The practice becomes simple. Breathe, observe, feel, trust. There are no more techniques, just presence. Your entire life becomes meditation, your walk, your gaze, your gestures, your laughter. Everything becomes part of an invisible choreography between you and the universe. It's as if the sea and the swimmer become one movement. Duality dissolves into rhythm, and what once seemed like a quest reveals itself as a dance one you've always known, but forgotten to remember. And so, between silence and breath, between the visible and the invisible, you begin to live differently, without clinging, without losing yourself, simply flowing. Awakening ceases to be an event and becomes a state of being. You no longer need to seek the universe because now you realize you were observing it the wrong way. It was never outside. It was always breathing through you. Awakening doesn't mean escaping reality. It means expanding it. It's realizing that every moment, every breath, every daily gesture can become an opportunity to connect with something greater, effortlessly, without the need to look outside of what you already have. A powerful practice to solidify this is keeping a navigation journal. Write down the signs, the insights, the synchronicities, the moments of intuition. Record every moment when life seems to whisper something beyond your comprehension. Over time, you'll realize that these records are not just memories, but internal maps that connect everyday perception with expanded consciousness. And the most extraordinary thing is that the mystical ceases to be rare or inaccessible. It becomes natural, like a dance between two worlds where the visible and the invisible coexist in harmony. Every detail, every person, every challenge is a piece of this dance. Looking back, you feel the quiet satisfaction of realizing that everything was there all along, that awakening isn't a distant event, but a way of life. And when you feel this, you understand that awareness is practice, it's integration, it's movement. And remember, I'm not here just to teach. I'm here as a messenger, bringing words that might awaken something you already carry within. Follow your intuition, trust your gaze, and let each step you take be a whisper from the universe guiding you.